Hi everyone, this is Q and I've been known to have a green thumb. Well, I thank you for joining my channel. Please subscribe, please like, please leave a comment. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like. My channel is a very interactive channel. I love to garden, but I do not call myself a master gardener. So if there are things that work for you that you would like to share, absolutely share those with me. Today, what we are going to do is we are going to start our cool weather greens. We are in February. See, can you see that? That is the color of amethyst. Amethyst is the birthstone for February, which happens to be my birthday month as well. But I like to start my seeds. Last year I started them sometime around March. And so I said I want to get all these cool weather greens in the ground by late March, early April. So I'm going to start now. This is now mid-February and we are gonna plant some of the what they call cool weather greens. Now that for me is mostly leafy greens. I love leafy greens, celery, carrots. I'm going to do some onions because I need some onion powder. And I'm also, even though peppers are not necessarily cool weather greens, but I'm running out of peppers. So I really need to get these started because I want to minimize the amount of time that I actually have to go to a grocery store to pick up the 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 peppers. And I use peppers all the time in my recipes. So I need to start these very soon because I am running out of the supply that I used or that I preserved for my fall harvest. So I tend to can or freeze my onions, my celery, my peppers, and I can use those all winter. Well, we've been using a whole lot of peppers, so I need those. So, and also we're going to do carrots. I love planting carrots and I want to get started on those because I would like to get those in the ground where they're cool as well. Now, if you know anything about the USDA plant hardiness zones, I live in Illinois, which is zone 6. So if you're not familiar with the USDA, go to the USDA plant hardiness zones. You can Google it, or I am also going to put a link in the description box. It gives very good tools for if you are just beginning your gardening excursion, your gardening journey, your gardening experience. You want to go to see what crops grow best in your particular region. So for example, if you live in Alaska, you probably are not going to grow too many tropical citrus trees. Just not gonna, when you get a deep freeze, don't expect to get any fruit from those trees. So if you know what your region is, it will give you a very good indicator as to what crops are going to do well in your climate conditions. So you also can see that if you look at the back of usually any seedlings that are worth their salt, they're going to give you instructions on the back. And you can see there's a map there. So you're going to find your state in the map. Now, my state is Illinois, so I'm in the green. And it will tell you when it's best to place your crops in the ground, depending on what you are planting. So this is celery, and it does say that you should transplant into the ground for my region between April and June and August and September. So I plant twice my cool weather greens because I live in a mostly cool weather state. So that's what we're doing today. Let's begin. So what I've already done was I've gotten my seed starters together. So what I do is I mix a seed starting mix. Now the seed starting mix that I use has peat moss that is very good for nutrient palettes. It's got vermiculite and it's got perlite. So you can see the little white little, what do you call them? The little white things in there. Those are good for moisture retention. They are also good for aeration. Your roots are going to need oxygen, and these provide some air pockets, basically. So that's that. And also what you want to do is when you start your seeds, if you want to save some time, you want to start placing your, or start labeling. You see, I already started labeling. You want to label your tags ahead of time. It does save you some space. Yesterday, I was just in front of the TV and I just labeled my tags so that I can just get all this started. Now, what I'm going to be using to start my seedlings is the seed starting tray, and it has got 18 cells, and it's got a, what do you call this? The drainer. So it's got a tray below so that it can drain. And it also has a, it's somewhere around here, but it also has a dome, and you'll see the dome when we start to, when we're done, basically. You can start your seeds in anything. If you go and you get these little containers from the store, you can start your seeds in these containers. I would suggest that you put some holes in the back so that you can drain. You can also, if you have gotten seedlings from whatever your nursery is, or Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, save these. This actually saves you some money. They've already got the drainage, and you can actually start your seeds in these. You can also, I've got some more where I just bought seedlings last year. There is no shame in actually buying seedlings as opposed to getting the actual seed. It's a little more expensive because they've done the work for you and all you have to do is transplant, but I get them every year. If I go into a nursery and I see something that I like, I will take the seedling and I will plant it. There's nothing, there's no problem. You can also go to Amazon and get these little, these are, I believe, biodegradable, so you can actually plant the whole thing in your garden when you're ready to transplant. The only caveat that I will give you if you are buying online is that if you are purchasing online, watch the scale. Now, when I bought these, I was led to believe, just based on looking at the pictures and then even some of the descriptions, it looked as though these cells were a lot bigger. So I was expecting to get something this big, and I ended up getting this. And although these are good, what you also want to be mindful of is the size, because if you are starting your seeds in these, and it's perfectly fine to start your seeds in these. I actually start my tomatoes in eggshells because I want some of that calcium to go into my plant as they're growing. So if you're starting small, you want to be mindful of how long you're going to keep these in these little trays, because if you're going to be doing this for more than 6 weeks, or sometimes even more than in between 4 weeks, depending on how fast your seedling is going to grow, you don't want that seedling to get root bound, because if it gets root bound, then, and roots don't like to be bound. So roots like room, and you are going to have to either move this to a bigger cell, or you're going to have to move it to where it's going to actually start to grow. And if it's too soon to place it outside to grow, then it's just going to be double work for you. So be very mindful if you're getting these small little cells like this, how long you're going to keep them in there, and then where you're going to put them, because you may have to move them from here and place them in a bigger cell before you even put them outside. That's just too much work. I like to work hard, I want to work smart, not hard. So, but those are just a few little things. You just want to make sure you have drainage. You want to make sure that you can cover your unit, whatever you're using, with something to create sort of a greenhouse effect. So if you're using Yeah, I just dropped something. Forgive me. If you're using something like this, there is no problem with either taking the lid if the lid is clear, or you can just take saran wrap and cover like this. Now, I did grow some things last year just like this, and they work perfectly fine for me. So, in terms of your soil, you want to make sure, what I've done is I've taken the garden soil, or I'm sorry, the soil, the seed starting mix, and I mixed it with some potting soil. And that is going to create a very good balance. Now, here's another caveat that I'll give you. I like going to the dollar store as much as anybody else. However, I will never purchase garden soil from the dollar store. I don't know what's in it. And I don't know if I trust the soil enough. There are some things you just should not splurge on. Or there's some things you should splurge on and some things you should cut corners. Your garden soil is something that you should not cut corners. Now, unless you are just very, I don't know. If you really want to try it, you can. But perhaps what you might want to do is invest in a electronic soil tester. I have this one, and it basically tests pH and fertilizer. And all you do is you place it in your soil, and it's going to give you a reading on what you want. Now, this isn't even on, but it's going to give you a reading on whether or not you've got not enough nutrients, too much nutrients, or if it's in the middle just right. So that's something that you may want to do. You'll quickly find out that gardening can be a very expensive habit, or I'm sorry, hobby. It can be a pretty expensive hobby, and you don't want to purchase things that you just don't need. I have a lot of things when I was very overzealous when I first started my garden, and I got so much stuff that I just never used, and it looks nice, it's packaged nice. I even saw one time a garden bed fertilizer. What is the difference between the garden bed fertilizer and a regular fertilizer that can fertilize anything? But if a person goes in and they know that they have garden beds, I guess it's a very good marketing tactic. It's very good marketing, but it's not necessary, I don't think, because when I looked at the ingredients of that garden bed fertilizer and a regular fertilizer, there was no difference. There was really no difference. So make sure that you are being frugal, because it can get expensive. But I promise you, the return on investment is very high. When you start to see your garden grow, and when you taste your first crops, oh wow, the satisfaction that you will have when other people start noticing and other people taste it. I know that when I grow my greens for the holidays in August, and I plant those in August, and they're ready to come up around November, and we eat those for the winter time. And when people taste those, they say, "Where in the world did you get these? I've never tasted them so fresh." Well, it's because they are fresh. All right, well, let's get into it. So what we are going to do is we're just going to moisten the soil a little. Now, forgive me, but I actually have a real job. I wish I could garden all day, but I need to actually pay the bills. So I have a job, and they probably don't want me to come to work with garden hands, so I am going to cover my hands. So you just want to moisten your soil. You don't want it wet. You just want it a little moist, because once you start to place it in the cells, you want to pack it, and you want it to be not so many air pockets. And if it's too dry, you might get too many air pockets, right? Okay. So these cells break away. And I am not going to impugn your time by showing you each and every cell. I am going to start it off and let you know what I do, and then I'll come back with the next steps, because this can be quite a lengthy process, especially if you're doing as many as I'm doing. But if you're just doing a few, but you know, if you have an afternoon to spend, go right ahead. Okay, so we're gonna take, here we go. We're just gonna take the soil, place it in. And there was just a little too dry for my taste. There you go. Okay, shake off any of the slack. This one here could use just a tad bit more. Now don't mind my OCD. And then we're going to do just a little more moistening, because once you put your seedlings in, you're not going to want to touch this too much more, because you don't want to interrupt the seeds. Okay. Oh, that's good enough. All right. So we've got our seedlings here. Now, generally what I do is I try to make them as smooth as I can. I'm going to put a little more soil here. Like I said, you don't want air pockets, because too many air pockets, that's just not a good thing, not for the seedlings. So what I tend to do is, because of the size of these cells, now if I were using these small ones, I'd probably just do something right in the middle, just because these are so small. But because this cell is much bigger, then I'm gonna take, just kind of stick your finger in, and make little divots. Just make little holes. There we go. Just make a couple little holes. And this is going to vary depending on the size of your unit. Now, if you have something bigger, you're probably going to want to use more, because we can't guarantee that each seed is going to germinate. So I tend to be less conservative, a little more aggressive when I'm placing my seeds in, right? I don't want to overdo it, but then again, I don't know how long these seeds are now, or I don't know how the seeds are going to germinate. So I want to do a little more and err on the side of caution. So when you have your seeds, and I'm sorry, I got a little dirt on it, you can see that they've got instructions on. Now, I'm doing sweet pepper right now. And it says, start indoors in warm, well-lighted area about 8 weeks before planting outdoors. Sow a quarter inch deep. So I've done probably about a 1/4 inch. And keep soil more moist. Seedlings will emerge in 7 to 10 days at 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit before transplanting. Move to a sheltered area outside for about a week. So you don't transplant directly from inside in an artificial environment straight into the ground, because you want to get your seed acclimated to the outside. We're going to use a grow light to grow this, and a heat mat. Well, when they go outside, the sun is their grow light. So you want to get them acclimated to the outside before you plant, right? Okay, so what we're doing, and usually the rule kind of is 1 seed, 1 plant, but you know, I try to get about 3 seeds in each cell. Can you see that? I'm going to do, let's see, 3 to 5 seeds in each cell. And then you're just going to cover as you go. This keeps you organized. Now, I know when I'm at home, the doorbell can ring, someone can call on the phone. I get, you might get an interruption. And so you do not want to, you might just say, hey, where did I leave off? So what I do is, I just take, here we go. And then I take my tag, and there you go. So I'm going to use a couple more. I'm going to use this entire unit, this entire row of units, and that is all going to be my bell pepper. Now, last year, my bell peppers grew very well, and I saved some of the seeds from last year as well. You can save your seeds, but you don't want to save them for very long, because just like anything else, as we get older as humans, the older we get, our reproduction slows down the older we get. So same with plants. The older a seed is, the germination rate goes down. So it's not as likely to produce a viable seedling the older it gets. Now, I actually just bought these seeds, but there are some seeds that I still have from last year, and I'm going to use those as well. So what I'm going to do is finish this. And then from there, once you've covered everything up, you just want to lightly spray. You do not want to pour anything into this cell, because if you pour anything into this cell, what's going to happen? Seeds are going to run all over the place. So you just want to moisten your seed. And you can even, if you're using a tray, you can even take water and start to water them from the bottom and have them absorb up. So that's where we are. I'm going to finish this off, and I'll be back with you in a minute. All right, we are back, and you see the soil is here. I have completed my cells for my cool weather greens. Let me tell you a little bit more about cool weather greens. Cool weather greens are those greens that thrive in cool weather conditions. There is a very important reason why there are some crops that should not be grown in the summer. Also, there are some crops that should not be grown in cool weather. Now, when you are planting greens in particular, if you are planting those and they are being, exposed to very hot conditions, you'll see that those leaves wilt. They just wilt during the day. And you also will see that the flavor is just not going to be there if you are planting them in conditions that are too hot. So they tend to be more bitter if you're planting them in conditions that are too hot. So you try as best as you can, because I don't know any region that doesn't have some type of coolness to it, I guess. I'm sure there are that are just really hot all year round, but I'm glad I live in a region where I can grow in cool weather. And that is the reason, because I love leafy greens. I love lettuce. I love kale. I love spinach, mustard greens. I'm actually growing beets as well. This is the cell for the beets. But so the next step, they're all in. They've all been placed in their cell. They've all been labeled accordingly. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to place these in their temporary home. Now, their temporary home for me is my basement. Now, my basement is cold and my basement is dark. So what we have to do is we have to do grow lights and heat mats. Now, this is the heat mat that I am using. I like this heat mat, and I just got this heat mat from Menards in my area. I live in Illinois. You got Menards almost on every corner. So this heat mat is going to be placed under your whatever it is you're growing. Now, the reason that I am growing with this type of seed starting kit is because the heat mat fits perfectly under it. As you can see, look, bam and bam, it fits perfectly under it. So that's why I got this heat mat. And you're also going to get a grow light. This is my grow light, and it comes with these little things that you can hang. Can you see that? That you can hang, and they fit very easily on top. So here's the other. You're just gonna cooperate, please. And you just snap this on, and I have a shelf that I can grow. So I'm gonna place this probably about maybe 12 inches above, and we're gonna put this on for about 12 to 14 hours a day. I also have a timer. So I put this on a timer, and when I set the timer to equal the hours of day that we have sun. Now, we are in February, and as the weeks go by, we're getting more and more sunlight. So I adjust this weekly based on the sunrise and sunset in my area. So I want to keep the conditions very similar to the outside, because I know that they're eventually going to be going outside. So I don't want them to be in complete shock. For example, if we have light from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., I'm not going to turn this light on from 6 o'clock until 4 o'clock in the morning. It just makes no sense, and we are going to shock the plants. So I think one of the very good tips that you probably want to take is, if you are using a heat lamp or a grow light, what you want to do is make sure that you mimic the sunrise and the sunset. And that's a very good indicator that they're going to acclimate well when they get outside. Also, when you place your heat mat down, you want to make sure you don't get too much heat or too little heat. I try to keep my heat at 70 72 degrees, 72, 73 degrees. And you can get a thermostat to measure, and that will keep the plant, keep the plant warm so that the roots get the heat that they need, and then they start to germinate. And then once they start to rise, you're going to start thinning. We're going to do another video to show you what happens when they start to rise. So you start to see your little buds coming up. We're going to show you what they are doing. Now, if you're placing this in a window, I would suggest a south-facing window, but you may still want, you may not want to do a heat mat, but you may want to supplement your light, because depending on your window, you still may not give the plants enough light. With a heat mat and the sun, that's probably not a very good combination. So you may want to see whether or not you can supplement the light, because if you have for example, I have south-facing windows, but I also have a next door neighbor. So they kind of muffle my light a little bit because it's not very direct, right? Their house is pretty close to ours. We are separated by a gangway. So there's not a whole lot of space between our homes, so I'm not giving my plant enough sunlight. That's why I use a grow light. That's why I use the grow light, so that I can make sure that they get enough light. Well, I am going to place these down where they are going to sit for probably about, we're mid-February. I am planning to transplant late March, early April, sometime around Easter, I guess. And I'm going to check in with you and let you know how these are doing, show you their progress, show you what I do when they come up and they thin, and, do a little lessons learned, because I try to do lessons learned every year. I tend to take a very academic approach when it comes to everything, basically. So I take notes on my plants to just to tell me what I need to do better, and then I can refer back to them just to improve. I love to garden, and hopefully this video was helpful to you. Again, like, comment, subscribe, and come back. Please hit the notification bell, because I will be back to show you the progress of these seedlings. Also, I'll show you how I grow some of my in-house plants as well, because I have plants in every room. I just think they're very important. They help with oxygen. They help with, if you burned a bag of popcorn, you are going to want a plant to try to suck some of that toxicity out of your house. So come back and I'll show you a few more tips. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really had fun. I hope you did too. And I will talk to you another time.